That's great.
I was doing picture for my students, right? And they're appreciating it right now. Yes.
After that meeting, I appreciate that.
I don't want to. Very good. Pass along that he wanted to give a reminder that 30 years ago, we were talking to water together. Appreciation for that.
Yeah, no, that was 30 years. Hey.
And then you see it and you're like.
No.
It's all great.
Let's do it.
Yes.
Awesome.
What I'm saying is.
Yeah.
Not pushing that at all.
That was, I must have done it before that. That was getting scared. Hey.
He's
I recommend I do apologize.
To get to that. That's my appointment. No, I'm done with the meeting.
No, I was done with 5 minutes.
But on the other. I was done. I know. I was really done. I wasn't.
Very happy together.
Happy to build this. Exactly. I built all farms. Might be a good idea. I'm just curious if you heard about it.
Yeah.
Curious how the book is gonna go. Like, uncertainty that I was like, I tried to pop in on the. Yeah. I saw that. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right, welcome everybody. It's 9:06 a.m. I'll call this meeting shorter. This morning, we can just see the great work that Harmony does for us, because of the, clearly everybody kind of scrambling, so when we see her, we all need to give her, a big thanks. Amanda, when you're ready.
Yes. Director Bradley,
Here.
Director Brett,
Here.
Director Cardenas,
Here.
Director Daly,
Here.
Director Keegley, here, Director Litvak, here, Director Olson,
Present.
Director Peterson,
Here.
Director Prokopis,
Here.
Director Silvestrini,
Here.
Director Stevenson.
Here. All right, do we have any public comments? Do we have any online public comments? Okay, seeing none, we'll move into item 3, which is the audit presentation, resolution 23-1201. Here from Aaron and Debbie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Board. Earlier this morning, we presented the audit report for fiscal year 2023 to the Finance Committee. UPD contracts with HBME to do their annual audit, and today we have Aaron Hickson, CPA from HBME. I'm sure you guys are all familiar with Aaron, so I will let Aaron present the audit.
Thank you very much. Yes, I'm a partner with our firm and we were engaged to perform the audit services for UPD as of and for the year ended June 30th, 2023. I will direct you to page number 1 of the report that is shown on the screen. This is literally the only document we can claim as ours, and it is the independent auditor's opinion. The rest of it is with our assistance drafted by and approved by management. And so the first couple paragraphs of this report is our opinion. It is a unmodified or clean opinion. It is the highest opinion that we are able to give. And it just says that the audited financial statements of UPD as of 2023. And then the second paragraph, in our opinion, the accompanying financial statements present fairly in all material respects the financial statements. And so just wanted to let you know that this year, I also think it's very important to know that Debbie and her department did wonderfully. They provided us the information that we needed. We felt comfortable with their responses, the support that was given. I have a term that I affectionately call audit warm fuzzies. When I make an inquiry of personnel at any entity, if I feel that they know what they're talking about, they can produce support for numbers relatively quickly, I feel comfortable that there are good controls in place, that the personnel are knowledgeable for what they are in charge of, and it just helps me through the process. Versus, looking at deer in the headlights, like I don't know what you're talking about, I don't even know where to begin. I had audit warm fuzzies throughout, and I am impressed with the finance team and everything that they did to assist with the audit field work and testing. I will go to page 8. This is a table in the management's discussion and analysis. This table, or this section of the report, is written by management, and therefore it doesn't have accountant speak, and so it reads quite well. It is the only place, where you get a dual year presentation, and so that's why I'm focusing my remarks here. You'll see that change year over year was relatively consistent and reasonable with expectations, except for the deferred inflows of resources. That had a decrease of about $25 million. I wanted to, as we discussed with the finance committee, just let you know that is attributed to the URS unfunded liability portion of the obligation. And this is determined by actuaries, and then this number is then broken out by entity throughout the state or whoever's covered by URS. And then this changes year to year with very complex calculations. And it's very volatile. I think volatility is the best term to describe the URS unfunded obligation, because last year it was, you had a liability and some net assets or net pension assets. This year you just have the liability. And so it's based on a lot of factors. And so I wouldn't put a lot of stock into it, even though that number and that decrease is incredibly large. It does not have anything to do with operationally what's going on. There's no deficits in operations because of this unfunded liability. And I just wanted to make sure that the board was aware of that. We'll go to page 9. This is the income statement, if you will. And you'll see here that charges for services increased substantially from about 65 million in the prior year to 75 million in the current year. This large increase was attributed to a few factors. One, the wage wars that resulted in needing more member service contributions for these wages, as well as the separation of Taylorsville City. And so this is a known number. It's within expectations based on the activities of the UPD during the year. You can see here that all, the investment earnings and operational expenditures were relatively similar year over year. And so from an operation standpoint, it was a pretty good year. I also wanted to highlight that we'll actually go to page 58 and show this here. This is your balance sheet and your income statement that is broken out by precincts. And I wanted to talk about the fund balance portion at the bottom of page 58. In the prior year, there was a deficit of the committed amount for compensated absences and the obligation therein. And it was determined that 2 payments would be made by each member to help with that deficit position. And payment number 1 of 2 was made, and that brought everyone back into a positive situation related to that commitment. Payment number 1 is yet to be made, and that will continue to stabilize this obligation for its payment number 2, excuse me. Thank you. And then now I want to finally talk about page 51. There is a subsequent event. We are required, when there is an event that happens after the financial statement date, in this case, again, June 30th, 2023, that affects materially the entity, we are required to describe that to the best of our ability. And this section here, note 10, talks about the separation of the Salt Lake County Sheriff's Office from the UPD, and it is anticipated to be effective July 1st of 2024. Salt Lake County has a big part of UPD operationally through various contracts and services. They also have a large portion of shared service revenue, and year in and year out, on average, the charges for services revenue, they contribute about 20% of the operational revenue, and so this separation is going to be subject to the contractual, the terminology, it slipped my mind, what's the formula? can't remember the formula, separation formula. Okay, departure formula. And so because these negotiations are ongoing and will be for the near and long-term future, the outcome of this separation is still largely unknown, but we do know that it will be a significant impact to UPD, and that's why we've disclosed it here in note 10. And during the finance committee presentation, there was some recommendations to modify some of the language here, and we will work with legal counsel and Debbie and her team to make sure that it accurately reflects the desire of the finance committee and the board, as well as the finance department.
Madam Chair, I had a sidebar conversation with our auditor in the break between our two meetings, but I think I would be satisfied with this language and accepting the audit if that first bullet point were reworded to say something to the effect that historically Salt Lake County has contributed approximately 20 to 25% of the member fee paid to UPD or something like that. That's factually accurate statement, and it's not as vague as what this, and it doesn't purport to imply or any connection between percentage of assets, liabilities, revenues, because those belong to the department, not to any particular member.
Yes. And we don't have any problem with modifying the language, so hence the reason this is draft stamped for this very thing. The board approves the report, and we want every member of the board to feel comfortable. So we will absolutely do that.
So can I ask, in terms of timing on accepting the audit, and the audit needs to be filed with the state. I don't want to hold that up or create problems, but I do want to get this fixed. If we were to vote to approve the audit subject to revision of this language, is that something that is going to be acceptable to this board? And because we won't know what it says actually, how are we going to handle that?
I'm happy to have Debbie or whoever disseminate that language and just give note 10 to all of you. As long as we submit it to the state at 11:59 p.m. on December 31st, you're in compliance.
So we could handle that through email communication, and if we accept the language, we could send an email to Harmony, or Harmony's not here, but Harry.
I'm fine to change that language. I don't think it changes really anything other than it's not addressing assets and liabilities. It is addressing revenues, and I think that's historically accurate. And so I'm okay with that change. It does reference the departure formula above, which governs assets and liabilities anyway. So I think it's accurate for two reasons on that basis. So I'm fine with that change if you want to include it. If you're waiting for my approval.
What if we amended that to say Salt Lake County has historically contributed 20 to 25% of the revenue received by the Department for Services?
Excellent.
Would that language exactly that work? And then we know that, and we can approve the audit with that change.
Yeah. I'll still clear it with you if you're okay with that. Just
I'm happy
to make sure.
Do that. Sure.
Okay.
It has to be clear with the whole board.
Right. Well, I'm just
Okay.
you as a body.
But you had a good question. Can the board approve it today, subject to that change?
Well, I'm suggesting if we modify the language that will read, Salt Lake County has historically contributed approximately 20 to 25% of the revenue received by the Department for Services, end quote. We can vote to approve that today.
Should be approved with the amendment.
Yeah,
We could do that today. Did you do the amendment today? Go ahead.
well, that's what I'm suggesting now, so that we get it done, and then we have it done before the deadline. The state gets the audit, we don't have to worry about it. So I don't want to cut you off, but
That was appropriate. You're supposed to cut me off when
all right,
appropriate.
well, I mean, I have the benefit of saying to the finance committee, I'll make a motion when it's time, unless we want to say more.
No, I'm here to answer your questions. My presentation's done, so I want to be able to address any questions that any of you may have.
I have a real weird random thought that may even. Or for the board, I mean, technology these days, you could probably make a phone call and have this thing. Restated and back into your email inbox for us to vote on before the end of this meeting.
It's absolutely, I could have that done and get you an updated draft. Yeah,
I don't care. I mean, if that doesn't happen, then, but I don't know that it changes. I think we still can approve the motion with that.
yeah. I could do that if desired.
Well, there's no reason not for you not to do that unless it creates an undue burden on your staff or something like that.
No, I'll just, what I'll do is I'll have them change it and then send over that excerpt and.
But it's gonna say that, so I don't have a problem making the motion. Unless you, if you want us to wait.
I'm comfortable with it. I am looking at Salt Lake County to see if
Then I will make, Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that the board approve the audit for this fiscal year with the change that to note 10, first bullet in the second paragraph of note 10 that says what I said before. I guess I don't get it right this time. So historically, Salt Lake County has contributed approximately 20 to 25% of the revenue of the Department for Services.
I'll second.
seconded. We have further discussion on this.
I'm looking for the note that Harry made where he discussed that the separation formula is noted above.
It is,
I mean, I read the audit, but I didn't, in the paragraph.
It's the fourth line down towards the end.
Departure formula.
That's being negotiated.
It's being negotiated.
Okay, then I'm comfortable with that change.
Yeah, it's always fun to put a very complex situation in a page.
It's been a lot of.
And so I understand that it needs to be modified all the time. This is not the first time that
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify what Harry was. Thank you.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that passes.
All right.
Thank you so much. All right, next up, we're gonna hear from Sheriff.
Morning, everybody.
And Director Paulson, sorry, I always forget to say your name.
Oh, I don't know. I'm thinking I was up here for the update. To get started with the update, we have two individuals in the room who I want to recognize right off the bat because they're both retiring from UPD. So I'm going to ask them to stand. Monty Karchner and Chris Sullenby. So Monty has 42 years in law enforcement. Correct me if I'm wrong, it's 42 years. And Chief Ownby has 40. And they both worked for Salt Lake County Sheriff's Office and UPD and have both done just an amazing job. And it's going to be a loss to us, but great for the community because now we're going to have great retirees out there. But I just wanted to recognize them through the board so you understand how many years they have dedicated, 82 years together. So that's a lot. So I just wanted to. Sometimes it gets really difficult when you have that many years on and it's time to say goodbye. So Chief Ownby is having a retirement party tomorrow. Monty chose not to, but we just wanted to recognize them both for their service and wish them well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. You've been a font of information and been great work.
All right, next thing is we did shopping with the Shield this past Saturday. 127 kids received a gift card for $250 for shopping. There were 39 families that also received a $400 gift card to shop. We distributed over 46,850, and all that money was raised by officers from UPD and deputies and all our civilian employees from the sheriff's office. So this program began years ago with our beard program, where we allow them to grow a beard, and the females can color their hair and their fingernails, and they all have to pay for that to be allowed to do that. But the programs worked for a very long time. We've raised a ton of money, and we set it up as a nonprofit. So the plan is to continue even after the split, to have the two organizations continue to both donate into that, because it's such a great program, and we want to make sure it stays successful, especially for all these kids we help. Some great stories. I know Mayor Stevenson was there. You got to see some of the families. There's a lot of families out there that truly need help during this time of year, and it was just heartbreaking, but also very satisfying, and it felt great to see them. Many were using the money for food instead of gifts, so it was just a great time. So hopefully, maybe next year some of you can attend and see that. It's a great program. And then also we had the mutual aid Christmas party that is for the employees and those members who are part of the mutual aid. They collect money as well, and then the employees' kids get to go to this party and meet Santa, get a gift card, get a little gift. Just a great time, and I just wanted to thank the mutual aid board for always consistently keeping that going as well. So the plan again is to continue with our mutual aid and really doing effort, and we want to make sure that stays ongoing as well. So let me see if I have anything else. Is that it, Wayne? Okay. I think that's all I have for the update, and then Mark has some updates from HR.
Yeah, I just want to take a moment and just update you again on our staffing situation. Rick, if you could bring that. There we go. So as you know, as the sheriff just mentioned, Chief Ombie and Monty Kirchner will be retiring effective Saturday. And we've had two additional retirements announced since our last meeting. Officer Morgan Matthews and Officer Brody Waldron will both be retiring on the 1st of January. So that impacts our staffing a bit, but we hold them well and thank them for their service. If you can scroll down just a little bit there. And to the left. There you go. In our Canada pipeline, we have 3 hires that will be joining us on December 22nd. One of those is a lateral. One is an LEO certifiable individual that put himself through the academy. So we don't have to do that, and that's great. Saves us some time. And then we have one rehire, an officer that left us to go to another agency and has changed his mind and asked to come back. So we're taking him back. So we'll be onboarding them on the 22nd and getting them into the training process. In addition to that, we have.
That's what we like to hear.
Yeah, right. It's great. We need the bodies out there. Yes, sir.
I have a question. I see the encumbered line.
Yes.
The ones at the bottom, the candidate pipeline, are they to fill that line or are they to fill the yellow line?
They will fill the encumbrances. once
Those
they're
are the
assigned.
encumbered.
Yes. So as of the 22nd, they'll encumber positions within that.
Gotcha.
And so the numbers, just so you know, the numbers on that line are real time as of today. So like Chief Ombie and Officer Kirchner are not reflected there yet. They will be as of next week. So that's truly where we are today, as far as that. You can see we have a fair number of folks in the pipeline as far as encumbrances. A portion of those will be done about in January. with their full training, and so they'll be assigned to their respective precincts then. In addition to that, we had 6 applicants in November. We have moved all of those that were eligible to move on into backgrounds. And we had 1 lateral also that applied in November that we're moving through that process as well. So that's kind of where we are today. If you can click the second tab there. This is just our attrition. Again, this does not reflect Chief Holmby and Officer Karchner there, but it will next time we meet. So you can just kind of see a snapshot of where we are today as far as our attrition goes. Are there any questions any of you have? Okay, thank you very much.
For the update.
Thank you. We'll move into item 5, which is the separation policy discussion resolution 23-12-02.
Okay, I'm sorry. Good luck. Hard copies. Okay. As was mentioned in the previous meeting, wanted to bring before you today our separations policy. Reason for that is we have discovered that there is an inequity in the policy that basically we're treating members disparately in the way they are paid out when they separate from our office. So in our current policy, as I mentioned, there are 2 triggers that activate a 25% payout of accrued sick leave for a member when they leave the organization. Those triggers are the separation from UPD and the separation from URS. And so what we're proposing today is that we eliminate one of those triggers and simply make it a separation from UPD. We had 2 members that recently retired from the organization. One of them went to URS and turned in his paperwork to retire. So in essence, he activated both of those triggers by doing that. And so he is eligible for the payout. The other member chose not to do that. And so he would not be paid out. We do feel like that was fair, and we feel like they're being treated disparately because of that. The rationale for allowing this payout is to have members get a benefit for responsible use of their sick leave over their career. There's no cap on sick leave. They can accrue that unlimited through their career. And frankly, our worry is that if we close that door, that members will be incentivized basically just burn their time before they leave. And that would certainly have an impact on our staffing and our ability to function. Especially given that we're looking at a fair number of folks that are maybe moving to the county here in the near future. That's kind of where we're at. The policy amendments there in front of you is simply to remove the URS trigger, make it a separation from UPD once you've reached that threshold of retirement under the URS. Any questions on any of that?
It was presented in the finance.
No, that's fairly brief, but we can discuss a little bit deeper.
Mr. Chair, I will make a motion to approve resolution 23-12-02 of 2023, adopting an amended separation policy provided in our package.
Thank you. We do have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
A motion, a second. Any further discussion on this?
Just wanted to mention that this was voted and approved by the financial committee to forward on this.
All right, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, up next, item 6 is the UPD reorganization update.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
It's been a while since we met, the week before Thanksgiving, so some things have gone on. I'll get you on some of those. Punch that up, Rick. Let me show you, let me tell you about how we got to this version. There's actually a couple different versions of this, and again, my disclaimer. It's a draft version, subject to change, but I will say we are close because we are at the point when we meet individually or in groups. It's almost like we're just moving the checkers around the board, but not moving them much, and it's not making huge leaps like it did early on in the process. This is the draft for December 4th. And a significant thing that we did that really helped for the discussion was, in the past, we've looked at this in groupings and we've looked at it horizontally. You know, we've looked at the left side and the right side and not looked at it from a different perspective. But what we did is we scheduled one-on-one meetings with every single commander and their XO, their lieutenant, their managers, whoever, and came in and looked at the chart horizontally or vertically. So we looked at those. You can see they're kind of set up in columns. And so we went, for instance, to like the Mill Creek column there, see, and we took the command from that and we said, look at this from just Mill Creek's perspective, or just tech services, or just Magna, and let's talk about, do you have, you know, what you need? Is there a different way we can do this? And it really generated some really good discussion. It was interesting that when we looked at it from the vertical perspective, it actually stoked some other conversations about the shared services and some of the other pieces that really brought up some good ideas. So once we did that, you know, that was a series of 7 or 8 meetings. And once we did that, then we brought it back to our reorg committee and took those ideas and went through it. This is kind of where we're standing right now. Some of the significance of that is there's a couple different versions of this chart, some adjustments in the shared services. But this is what Chief Dial and I are going to use as we start the budget this week. And we are going to be putting together the budget for the next fiscal year. And so far that has shown some promise, and I do appreciate Debbie. We're going to try to get that out to you as quickly as possible. We're projecting maybe the next couple of months, right? We'll be meeting with commanders to go through their budget lines, look at that, and do it based on this org chart. We'll probably have to make some adjustments as we do that. We are getting close. We are hovering around 7% mark, and I'll give you more detail on that as we get down the road. The process is going well, and we've made some real progress, especially in the last couple of months.
Chief, can I just say, I mean, having had some discussions with Chief Penny Brown about things that are being discussed, I really appreciate the fact that our precinct commanders are collaborating with each other and talking about. I mean, we are going to see some reductions in precinct staff just to balance this out. And I really like the productivity of the conversations about how different precincts might collaborate, like on special units, like we were talking with Midvale about combining our CCSU with their, I can't remember what they call it, but essentially, D unit. And then I know that some of our officers are actually pleased about the fact that that may give them an opportunity to be more effective with our cars and things like that. So that's that interchange of ideas and trying to do this the most efficient way. It's really appreciated. I think that's going to make for improvements to the department that people are thinking creatively about this stuff.
Yeah, I appreciate you mentioning that, the creativity that's come out and the opportunity for creating more efficiencies or creating changes. It's been you know, as difficult as this whole situation's been, there's some real opportunities here to do some great
Yeah,
things.
it's easy to look at this as, you know, glass half full, that there's gonna be cuts and things like that, but if you start looking at it as, you know, that's, we can positively improve delivery of law enforcement, and even maybe even collaborate more. I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah, without question. And I do have to give a shout out to the commanders and the lieutenants, the managers, and even our reorg group, which consists of people from all over the organization, labor, every rank. They go in there, and those are just really, really good meetings where people are taking this really seriously and they're putting a lot of thought into it. And even, you know, the phone call out of the blue where someone had an idea, those have been productive too. So we're moving along really well. Obviously, we keep working on this, and the budget's complained in this org chart. I will get back to all of you on how that comes together. Our facilities work group had an opportunity to meet. As you know, we've looked at different options for locations where the UPD can continue to work from. I have asked our brokers to stand down for a period of time because we still have a lot of unknowns. You know, we have this Louisa question, some other things. Our brokers have been really great, especially in terms of educating us on how things work out there in real estate situation. We're also looking at other options. We're collecting some data right now and doing some assessments that I will bring you in the near future, probably in the next meeting when we actually have some information to share with you in that process. Everybody on that work group has an assignment right now. They're doing some assessments on some of the facilities we have, but some of our options still are out there to try to do something that's workable but cost effective. So I'll bring it to you in the near future. The interlocal committee met. I know Mayor Street will give an update. Appreciate everybody that's helped with that. That's moving along and been very productive. The other thing I'd like to mention is we're looking on the yellow part of that as we look at some of the shared services, especially in particular areas. I'll just we're early in the process on that, but we're having some really good discussions with people and future partners to make that work, make that as collaborative and as efficient as we can. And I'm really excited about that. I won't get into detail right now because it's premature, but I will be bringing that to the board and updating you on that when I have some more information on what that looks like. I know it's a little vague, but I just want to say overall, we're moving in the right direction. We're moving quickly. There's a lot of positive things happening right now, and I see a lot of opportunity. Like I say, you know, every time you have a problem, it creates an opportunity. So there's good opportunity out there for the UPD and for the sheriff's office. So I think things are going. We're making the best out of what we got. What's happening? Continue to do that. And I appreciate everybody that's collaborating on this project. It's a huge project. It's complex. It's been immensely challenging, but I feel really positive about it. So we're going in the right direction. You're going to have a good police department. It's going to be effective. I don't believe your citizens will notice much of a change. I think your police officers and your deputy sheriffs will adapt and will move forward. I'm one of the best law enforcement departments in the state. Continue. I don't know if anyone has any questions for me.
Got one. Do you have anything, just biggest checklist items top of mind as we start this new year, the things that we knowing that date's gonna come up real quick and just within the next few months of the new year, biggest items that we need to get to?
I'm glad you brought that up. This is actually a discussion I had a day or two ago after a meeting we had, and I'll just speak very frankly. You know, I created a transition plan, and I'm on version 3. Well, the transition plan is basically blown off hell because this thing is so complex and dynamic. I have to go back and change that. So to your point, I will update the transition plan, but there's a whole bunch of new things we gotta add to that. And, you know, some of the things that we didn't see even 2 or 3 months ago, now we're seeing more clearly, so I will get that and update that and get that out to the board members. So you can see some of our new benchmarks. You know, like I say, every plan is really good until the first shot's fired, and we gotta reconfigure the whole thing, so I'm glad you brought that up. I will get something out.
Yeah, I'd appreciate when that's sent out. I mean, I think it'd be part of this update if we as the board make a discussion about that. If we need to get down.
Yep. Work on that. It's coming week.
I have a couple of questions. It's not related to this org chart, because I think it's dead. Putting together a budget related to the new org chart, so some of this could have adjusted. But I've looked really closely at the budget from the previous iterations. Are you putting together the budget without consideration of revenue, or are you considering revenue sources when it comes to that? And I'm talking specifically looking at Slovisa. When I looked at the last budget, the budget was 28 million. And I think Slovisa just is looking to raise to the cap now and only brings in 25. So I'm trying to figure out if you're working towards, and that doesn't contemplate any funding for an incorporated county that's going with the sheriff. So I'm trying to understand, as you're building out your budgets, is revenue being considered? Or are you just putting together the best effort and the revenue will get figured out later?
Well, a little bit of both, I think. We're gonna look at, you know, revenue and look at this chart as it stands, but again, this is designed to be one possibility. It's all encompassing, it's inviting with everybody who's a member of the UPD now. But if that should change, then we'll make that adjustment to track backwards. Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. We're gonna be very flexible, and we recognize that's one of the real challenges right now. There's some major unknown questions that make this so hard for not just myself, but for the sheriff, chief actor, to make plans, project things. And so when some of those questions get answered, my thought process and strategy is, let's put in the work now. Let's be ready to go. If some of those questions get answered, we can pull triggers very quickly. Because you're right, Mayor, like July 1 is gonna be here before we know it. It's almost January. And the speed with this, how this thing feels. And I've been through this before. That's how it always happens. You know, that year passes and you're like, how did that go so quick? So in recognizing that, we're just gonna be prepared. And then when those decisions are made by policymakers and elected officials, we'll be able to pivot really quick. And that includes the budget.
Because that's a major concern from my perspective.
Yeah.
And I may have missed this, but when, because that is the crux of the whole issue, you know, revenues and expenditures. And when is that conversation taking place where we actually have information available saying this is what it's going to cost and this is the level of service? When does that happen?
Well, I know the board historically has asked for a budget in the February, March timeframe from past discussions. So that's what we're shooting for, is to have it ready by then, if not sooner.
And I think Aaron raises some appropriate questions to show gaps that we obviously see. And I know that we try to, the chairman talked in glowing terms, not glowing terms, Jeff, but talked about the positive of this process. And quite frankly, I think we're making the best of a bad situation. You know, you have to admit that, say, okay, things could be better. Things have been better. This is, we're trying to cover as much as we can. Remember that it's not a pleasant experience for me personally.
Yeah, it's not for any of us, but you know, I have this discussion all the time. We're just making the best of what we got and trying to keep our employees, officers, and civilian employees.
And we can do that, but anyway.
We
So
just
you're
want to
saying,
make sure the numbers
let me
are
make
there.
sure I understand. You're saying over the next 3 months, we're gonna have firm numbers showing how we've closed the gaps.
And we would do that even if we didn't have this situation, as the board has requested that historically, but there is a strong sense of urgency right now. Between myself, Chief Dial, and Debbie, as we talked to her and Rick. Let's get this budget done and let's get something put together. And then we have to make some adjustments.
I just noticed that the disproportional impact is to the Slovisa members, not to the cities or the bigger townships as well. So there's concern proportionally of who's absorbing these impacts as well. So I think there's lots to discuss and talk about. Just wanted to raise the issue here, but I think it's on everybody's radar. But it's gonna come down to a lot of the budget discussions as well, I think.
Yeah, it always does.
And there was one thing with the budget that we found out as we're building out the sheriff's office and looking at the UPD model. Some of the like equipment, things like that for UPD, we have not been fully costing it for replacement. And I know, Rick, you probably have more information on this than I do. But we're finding out that, you know, our replacement costs, we keep everything low because the board had asked for those flat budgets. So replacement costs were done at percentages. And as we're figuring out those same things for the sheriff's office that are being fully costed, we're seeing a huge discrepancy in costs. So that's something that I'm gonna ask them also to take a look at, because that for future, you need to know what it's going to cost as a full cost versus just those percentages. That's, you know, also something that needs to we need to take a look at and figure out as well for the UPD side.
Yeah,
That's like computers, radios, mainly equipment, vehicles. Yeah, so moving forward, that's a cost that has to, you know, we have to figure out that correctly.
But I want to emphasize really clearly, there are challenges. It's hard for everybody, but there's good things happening. And I will be, as more that information is formalized, I will bring that to the board. And again, I also want to let all of you know, you can call me anytime, day or night. Cell phone, I will come meet you. If you're going to be coming with your groups, I'd like to get out, meet the councils, and maybe go to some of your work sessions. There's some days here in the month of January. Call me anytime if you got a question or concern. And I will do everything I can to make sure questions are answered. So always available. So just let me know. I hope you're all having a great, or is there any more questions for me? I hope you're all having a good holiday season. We've been having a great time going out your precincts and visiting and meeting with everyone. And I know the sheriff has already done it, but I do want to give a shout out to Karchner and KO. Good cops. Just unbelievably reliable, fantastic job. They will be very much missed. Can't replace those guys. Maybe with Justin, we can replace one of them. You have no idea what's going on, do you? Sorry. I'm just being.
Is he taking Monty's spot?
Good, you want to take Monty's spot?
That's what I just heard. What's going on?
Anyway, if there's anything I do for you, please let me know. Appreciate your support from this board. It's been really important. Thank you.
All right, item 7 is the Salt County Law Enforcement Bureau update.
Thank you, everybody. We do have a few things to update on. We've been very busy these last few weeks. The first thing is that we had our budget approved by the county council earlier this week. We then had that same day a mayor commission meeting. Actually it was approved last week. I apologize. We had a mayor commission meeting earlier this week where we presented our pay scale. We also presented our sworn job descriptions. And those were approved by the Merit Commission. I do want to add on a side note, we're still working through our civilian job descriptions. There's a lot more of those that are a lot more technical and harder to separate out. So that's something that we are still actively working towards. We also presented our hiring policies for this transition to include seniority, waiving probation for those members that come over, and also the ability to retain rank for those that come over. We're currently working on our budget and our work charts with the mayor's office. We're meeting regularly, trying to refine that down in preparation for a presentation to the county council. We're also working on contracts and MOUs and establishing priority items, putting together those items that need to be addressed immediately and those that we need to work towards for the July 1st. We're continuing to work with our policy committee to get our policy manual established and wait to roll that out. As Chief Mazarin mentioned, we are looking for ways that we can create some efficiencies in the service areas that we provide and how we can better collaborate to create some cost savings. We have a meeting scheduled with our records departments to start addressing the transition process, looking at the nuances that we need to start addressing so that there's a seamless transition and how we're going to go about doing that. We met with fiscal yesterday with UPD to look at those revenue sources and take a deep dive into those that are going to be returning back to the sheriff's office, and also to get a better understanding of those that are going to be separated out. So we made good progress on that. That's all that I have to update. So I don't know if there are any questions or.
Can you give, anybody from the county curious, so the budget has passed, going through this transition, what was kind of included in that? Like, I don't know that.
Nothing, it was just this, Salt Lake County passed the budget, and for the sheriff's side, the sheriff's budget was passed. We did not include the law enforcement bureau into that budget.
So would that be taken care of in a budget?
That's gonna be taken later, once we get the true numbers. The challenge is breaking down the UPD budget line by line and matching up with the county's way of doing budgets. So that's what we're working on with the mayor's office right now, is trying to get those numbers in line. That answer your question?
Yeah, that answers it. I've got another one. The West Side Canyon request, was that included or
That's
considered in this
Slovisa,
budget?
that's totally different, so.
Well, I understand that, but I believe the Slovisa board made the request that you also go to the county and have
Yeah, and
them to fund it.
That's
So-
being resolved through Slovisa, so Slovisa, it's my understanding that Slovisa is not going to put it into the budget that they're passing. Whenever the hearing is up, this next week. But we're gonna negotiate. We're gonna sit down and negotiate those positions, so, and if we can get those negotiated. And even just get a couple of positions approved, that will be helpful, then we don't have to move those Magna cars that we talked about that are supposed to be serving Southwest, but they're in Magna, we wouldn't have to remove those. That's what I'm trying to avoid. Magna's kind of been dependent on those cars, and to pull that many out of Magna, there's going to be an impact. So we're trying to balance it, but that's all done through Slovisa.
Might just be have a lot of ignorance here. That's a good
Yeah,
possibility.
and Slovisa, the county council did approve that for Slovisa to move forward with the tax increase.
Okay.
That was done this week, Tuesday.
Now, because of the, I'm gonna say this and you're gonna say what you're saying is wrong. Because of the recreation, it can be covered from the general fund,
Yeah.
maybe, yeah.
Yes.
And so was that,
We do not have capacity in the general fund
so,
to afford this.
so at this point.
This is
the county
unincorporated
council
law
is-
enforcement, so we're working towards working with Slovisa.
So at this point, the county council and county has said we're not doing that.
No, they have not. This is
We
still
haven't
with
brought it to
Slovisa.
them.
We're still negotiating with Slovisa. Because if you look at that full budget of Slovisa of what's brought in, the county's only using less than the 2.7 million for those Southwest cars. So we're just asking for some increase there in those cars. That has to be done through Slovisa. So if Slovisa wants to take it to the Salt Lake County Council to ask, or if Slovisa denies me, I have that option to go to the county council and ask for them to cover that out of the general fund. I have not done that yet. I'm still negotiating with Slovisa to figure out how many they're willing to fund.
Sorry, I thought that was this Slovisa request, but I'm not mistaken.
It is a Slovisa request. It
Which has something to do with the county council.
Yeah, it doesn't have to do with the county council, right? It's complicated, but all that's through Slovisa. So my request was sent to Slovisa. I got feedback from them, and I've been in contact with Slovisa's director. We're going to sit down after the budget hearing next week and negotiate those cars. With fully knowing what the impact will be if we don't get any, what happens to the Magna precinct, because then we have to move cars. So that I know it's complicated, but we haven't taken it to the county council yet. We're not there yet. Anything else?
Has that area been designated a recreation area?
Well, through the resolution that the council passed. But that it's still, it's for me, I have the option to take it to Slovisa, and that's the option I chose. So Slovisa can vote on it and turn it down, whatever, but we're still in the negotiation stage. When I met with Slovisa in October, I said, do you have any questions? Let's talk about this. You're the only one that even had any comments. In November, same thing. You're the only one that had some comments, but we're still haven't finished negotiating. I've been in contact with Rachel Anderson. We're going to sit down after Slovisa's budget and negotiate those. So, and that's how we've always done it with Slovisa. We've always negotiated those positions. When Kearns and Magna asked for 5 cars each, and to split and have a chief each and more sergeants. That's what we did. We took it to Slovisa and we negotiated those. And the board said, well, we'll give you an officer every year instead of all 5 at the same time. But that's how the process with Slovisa works, is you negotiate those, and then if we don't get enough coverage, then I have that opportunity. I can go to the council and say, hey, still need more.
I think there might have been some audio issues on last month's call when you were on, because I definitely brought up some concerns also. Just thinking, if the county was going to open up those trails, they had to have had an idea that they were going to need help with the funding. So to all of a sudden come last minute to Slovisa, to me seemed like not quite a fair thing to do, just to cover this.
But can I just say that was not last minute, that was during the budget process of Slovisa.
No, and I'm not blaming, there's no blaming you. I'm just saying whoever in the county decided to open those trails had to have had that in mind. So the money was going to have to come from somewhere. And so for last minute, Slovisa, can you cover $1 million? That seems not quite.
But I'm the one that made that request. I made the request to Slovisa.
And I'm not saying it was you. That's exactly what I'm saying.
Budget process.
Somebody had to have thought of it, and so for it to get all of a sudden put in your lap then, and for then you to try to figure out where's that going to come from.
County council is even aware I made the request, because it was all done through Slovisa.
No, and exactly, and then that's when we actually, so the letter that was sent out from the lawyers and the mayors that ended up signing on to, that had kind of said, hey, shouldn't the county be the first ones you should be going to on that?
Well, in my mind, it should be Slovisa because it's unincorporated county.
But not because it's recreational? So the recreational part, where that's typically where who in theory has been the one that has the obligation to.
Says May.
That's a May, not a shall.
And the recreational district.
But you haven't asked
But
the
the
county yet,
recreational,
right?
No, because I went through the process of Slovisa. Slovisa was preparing their budget. That's when we always take any request, any Slovisa member takes the request during the budget process. And that's all I did is follow that process. And That's where we're at. If I need to, for the county's process, budget process, I'll take it to the county council during their budget process. But I did Slavisa first because that's what we're a member of Slavisa.
Paid for unincorporated county law.
No, and I totally agree that, yeah, if it's helping unincorporated folks, then that part of that should be up to Slavisa to help out with that,
Right,
part of it.
right.
Yeah, and that kind of begs the question that I mentioned earlier. That unincorporated county is by far the vast majority of the revenues coming into Slavisa.
Yes.
There's no question about that. And so when you see an expenditure come out saying, we want all of Slavisa's money plus $3 million more, I'm saying, well, God, that's a little egregious. And then when we talk about, well, the county should use other funds instead of their Slavisa. As a member of Slavisa, the county has every right to ask for money to do coverage in the unincorporated county, in which the canyons are. Yes, it is possible we could use general fund. That's not really an option this year, I can tell you that.
Right.
And so it seemed very appropriate saying, look, Slavisa has a fiduciary responsibility to service its members. And when a member comes forward and says, we have a issue, we have a need, here's what we want you to do, Slavisa, as a member, not, it's just like an outright rejection, go take a walk. I said, that's not the way the place was came. Am I misrepresenting that?
No, you're not. And it's no different than when Magna or Currens or anyone else comes to Slavisa and asks for more officers or more funding. So we shouldn't be treated any differently than anyone else. Whether
I
it's a recreation district or not. What we've paid for in law enforcement out of the general fund is Canyon Patrol. This is not Canyon Patrol. This is unincorporated county law enforcement. Yes, there's trails through there. And the sheriff has an obligation as the elected law enforcement officer to provide coverage for that
Specifically
area.
for recreation area though, isn't it?
Not entirely,
That's how it was presented. The whole thing was money for Canyon Patrol.
but it's not
No,
Canyon Patrol.
we-
I'm just saying that's how it was presented. I didn't present it.
It's unincorporated law enforcement.
I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm just saying that's not how it was presented. You're not the one that presented it. That's just how it came to us.
And when I presented it, I said it was for those unincorporated southwest areas,
Yeah, but that
With-
was
the trails.
Okay.
We talked about the trails.
specifically for the recreation.
We just talked about,
From
I
my
didn't even
from
say
my memory,
recreation.
I remember, it was presented as Canyon Patrol because of those canyon trails being open. And I think that really what it comes down to is that the trails and the canyons, east and west side of the valley, are used by all Salt Lake County residents. All Salt Lake County should be bearing the burden of that, not just Visa members, including the county. So South Jordan was saying we have double taxation, and they kept pointing to the canyons. Well, yeah, and their residents are in the canyons, both east and west. And as that need arises, then that need is arising for financial contribution from all Salt Lake County residents. Whatever entity it is that's bringing that funding in, all Salt Lake County residents need to be supporting the canyon usages, east and west. And that's the basis of it. So I remember in one of the discussions on Jeff's committee that we had, and Sandy Mayer said, well, why should Sandy be paying for search and rescue? We don't have any areas they do search and rescue. So the next week at the meeting, good on Canyon Patrol, they brought in the record of how many people had service for search and rescue. And Sandy had more residents having to be rescued out of the canyons than anyone else. And the mayor goes, oh, I see that now. And that kind of details.
So we're not talking about search and rescue. Search
No,
and rescue is paid for out of the general
right.
fund.
But that just kind of gives you, what I'm doing is speaking holistically, that there's a misconception out there because it's a lack of understanding of the impact that Salt Lake County residents, all residents, not just Slavisa members, put upon all canyons, east and west.
With that said, I think that's where it's also hard that we don't know how many people it's actually gonna take to cover the new open trails also.
That's,
My numbers, you know, we came up with it by talking to the people that live in unincorporated. That the biggest complaint was they weren't seeing the cars there. They weren't seeing the service. And that's what we were trying to address without taking away from what Magna's been dependent on. Because they have been dependent on those Southwest cars for years. So that's something that we can take a look at, is just look at the Magna precinct and see, pull those out, put them into a different precinct, but it's gonna, my fear is we leave Magna short. And that's my role as UPD. I have to look at the organization as a whole, and that's what I'm doing. But the numbers I chose, I know we negotiate down. Because we always do. When Magna and Kearns asked for 5 officers each, our expectation, we wanted them now. And the board said, no, we'll give it to you 1 every year. And that's what negotiations are for, and that's what we're gonna do. But you know, that I followed exactly the way I've always done it since I've been part of Slovisa and UPD. We've always gone to the Slovisa board first during their budget process, and that was the time frame. If it doesn't go through, then I'll go to the county council during their budget process and do the same thing, ask for cars.
I just want to clarify, my pushback was not that those people don't deserve being serviced. I was questioning the timing. Nobody's coming forward with big budget asks right now as we try to navigate through this. They've mentioned the shortfall in Slovisa funding. It's not the time for a new ask. Let's revisit it at a later date. You said it'd been underserved for years. Your county was paying a portion of those cars in Magna, not 100%. I wasn't enjoying 100% subsidy from the cars that you supposedly funded from the county. You were paying for a portion, and so was Magna. I just said the timing was off. It's just not a good time. I didn't say never. I agree that it's a recreation area. I'd rather us look at other funding sources so that the whole valley pays for that, but I'm not saying that we can't get there. I just said the timing is horrible.
And it was because of the budget for Slovisa. That's the time of the budget.
Right. And you brought up Magna and Kearns got additional staffing. We did it over time. We didn't come with one huge ask. We wanted all.
No, we did.
All in year one.
We did have a huge ask, but we negotiated those down to where it's 1 per year to increase it. It was a negotiation. That's all I'm asking for, was a negotiation. And I've talked with Rachel Anderson. We're gonna negotiate after the holidays. At the first of the year, we'll negotiate, and it was only opening a conversation. Apparently it opened up a can of worms of somewhere.
Can you not see the timing in this? You're telling us now at this critical juncture that, oh, we've been underserving him for years.
Well,
and now's
because
the
I
time.
didn't know until I started going out to the unincorporated and talking to these folks. That's what happened. That's how I was made aware of it, is I went out there and met with them, and that's what they relayed to me.
Is there I mean, obviously, this is the big variable in finalizing this transition, unless I'm getting it wrong. When is this gonna be resolved? When are these budget issues within Slovisa gonna be resolved? So we know what the pieces are. What's the date?
I don't know if we have a date. I think the conversations will be underway for the first 3 months of the year.
And part of that was, we were waiting on the county to vote this week on the tax increase, which definitely is affecting how much Slovisa potentially, does that actually affect this year going forward?
Yes.
Okay.
And we're one
the
of
county
all of the
supported
members.
that.
Yeah, no, but that's definitely what part of Slovisa was waiting for also, to be able to see if the tax increase was even gonna be able to be implemented.
All members have to approve it.
Well, July 1st is quickly approaching.
Yes, it is.
And we got officers sitting here waiting for decisions, and it needs to be resolved. We've put all this organizational work in place. We've got our budgets in place, and we're sitting here waiting. We got an interlocal we're working on, getting ready to be signed.
Well, and until there are additional conversations and the legislative session happens, I don't think any of it's resolved. Because there are issues that need to be addressed in the session. both for the Metro Township and potentially for the county.
Can you tell me why if the sheriff's responsibilities to the unincorporated only accounts for 2.7 million, why you need to pull the entire funding from centrally assessed out from under Sylvester?
I didn't make that request I only asked for officers and 2 sergeants. I did not request.
Well, that's what's I'm understanding is there's gonna be legislation for Salt Lake County to go out. And until we know if that's gonna happen, I don't know what's the next step?
And as I mentioned, there will be more conversations, I think, over the next 3 months to make those final decisions and figure out how we're all moving forward.
You know, the fact that it's centrally assessed really has no bearing. Centrally assessed just means that the state assesses the value, not the county.
Correct.
That's all it means.
But I'm saying fundamentally, the new organization or UPD as a whole, last year there was X number of call volume and X number of dollars to provide that service. That is not fundamentally changing going forward. It's going to be delivered under 2 entities instead of UPD. It was all under UPD's umbrella before. Now it's going to be under UPD and the sheriff's office. Same call volume, same bucket of money. Why can't that work?
Because it costs more.
Yeah.
Because why?
Because it costs more for all of us. It's not that simple. And metros are becoming cities and towns, and the county is self-providing. And that fundamentally changes the special service district model concept. So I think there's lots to discuss still.
You have any other questions for Chief Ackerman? Sorry, you got caught up sitting up here, but.
You're getting a dose of how complicated this all is.
With that, the next item is UPD reorganization discussion. If there's anything else that anybody would like to add. So Srini, I don't know how much you want to talk. We had talked about a little bit in those interlocal items. I don't know if you plan to do that. If so, I'd say we just.
I can talk about the interlocal items. I think we've talked about the reorganization discussion to some extent. So the governance committee met, and I may have Gary help me with this, but we've been putting together a new interlocal agreement, the stated agreement that borrows significant amount of the holding of revisiting. We had a very robust discussion about the selection of precinct chiefs and hashed out the concepts that while we want to preserve the ability of the communities that are served by these precincts to have advice and consent at minimum with respect to their chief, because we all want to work with our chief and have the chief we like, that in order for there to be accountability and to have one police department as opposed to 6 different police departments or something like that, that the precinct chiefs need to be accountable to the chief, and the chief actually needs to have the ability to hire them and remove them, if they're not working out. So I think we're striking a balance on that. We're not taking away the advice and consent, but we are making it clear that there is a chain of command, and you can't expect accountability if there isn't. You can't expect accountability from the police chief in this department. They don't have the ability to control who their precinct chiefs are. So we had that discussion. We are going to be inviting all the attorneys from the members of UPD, and I think most of them have actually been participating in these discussions, but we're going to make sure that all the communities council are on board with this agreement. We are going to push to try to get the agreement to our councils, hopefully get something ratified by the councils around March, so that we have that in place to move forward. So if your council has not been involved in those discussions, or if you have additional input, we want you to get that to Harry essentially as soon as we can. Let's see, we also talked about merit commission, and came up with a draft document that Harry came up with a draft document that kind of mirrored what merit commission has been with what we've been operating with this county, but we're going to need to form our own. And a lot of that is also patterned what the Unified Fire Authority has done with theirs, because they have their own merit commission separate from the county, and so there need to be rules and guidelines on that, and so there isn't an attachment to the interlocal that covers that. And so once again, if anybody has any concerns about that, we can invite labor on that, but I think labor's been involved in the discussion on this to, give comments to Harry so we can move forward with that. Am I missing anything, Harry?
No, I was just gonna say that we are gonna have another meeting in January, and then hopefully after that meeting, we will have something for an initial review for the board, hopefully at the January meeting. I think we're trying to move this forward so that then you can, I'm not gonna be requesting a vote of the board, but something to officially circulate that you've reviewed and that can be reviewed with your various councils going forward. I know that we have put on hold a meeting with legal representatives for the county because they were heavily involved in the budget process at the time, that maybe we can move that forward in January as well and have a few more answers in terms of at least a date and other things like this for confirm that, because right now the interlocal is still planning on July 1 for the ratification and use of the new interlocal structure. So but it is still going to be a continuation of the existing UPD. We're not reorganizing ourselves other than we're not reforming, we are simply amending and reorganizing. And I don't know for sure we'll be able to stick with the timeline of getting it in January. There's a proposed amendment that some precinct chiefs want us to review that I still haven't seen. So we will at least take a look at that in the meeting. And then hopefully after that point, we'll have a document that, and I have been involving attorneys, by the way, for almost, I think, every entity that will be involved in the reorganized UPD going forward, and I really appreciate their help. I think they've been incredibly beneficial to have their input. And then we'll just identify at that point if there's what the consensus is, but note that obviously this board can change that document before it goes to the members for review, and we might even come back in February's meeting with some changes. If we're running up against a time crunch, we could go back to a second reorganizational meeting specifically for the purpose of refining that, so we still stick to the deadline of hoping to get ratifications back by March. But I do think that we're close on the document. I do think that through the process of input and discussion, we're making a lot of progress and getting down to the wire, where I do believe that we'll have still hopefully have something near final to have you review as the board in your January meeting.
Yeah, once again, anybody that wants to sit in on these meetings, you're welcome to do that. And we have had good participation from legal counsel for the various jurisdictions that are members, and we invite that. We want that because that's helped our discussions.
So each individual member will be a signator on that restated interlocal, correct?
That is correct. In fact, it's required that it be approved by everybody who wants to be a member of the reorganized UPD, that their councils approve it. So that's why I want to have as much time and answer questions. And when it comes up for approval, if this board is ready to move forward with it, I'd be happy to appear at any council meetings any of you have to discuss that and answer their questions. And if there is problematic provisions that are becoming controversial, we may either bring it back before the board for further discussion, or we might simply set a reorganizational meeting of the board specifically to deal with that issue, so we stay on track.
Can I ask a quick question as it relates to this? I know there's legislation that's been shared with all of us being run in the session to have the metro townships become either cities or towns. Is the intention to wait to have those interlocals signed when that decision is made?
No, we would go ahead as both all the jurisdictions as well as Lisa will be members of it. So I don't know that the legislation is going to affect that. And that way the interlocal is drafted, we have provision that basically says that the members themselves are responsible for paying their fees. So in the event that Sublisa didn't pay the whole fee, the member jurisdictions of Sublisa would be responsible to pay for that. So I think we're anticipating what would be in that legislation. And it should be able to deal with that and be flexible if there are changes.
Right now, it does list them legally as townships, because that's what they are at this time. But obviously, one of the things that we could look at is if they change their form of structure, you know, it seems like it would follow that they're still members, but that's something to think about, because I've not seen, I know there's legislation out there that may be proposed to allow transition to self-taxing authority, but I don't know when that would be in effect. Right now, it does reference townships, and it does impose upon them the obligation to pay. And then it says Slovisa may pay this bill for them, they're responsible for any deficiencies between what Slovisa pays and what is assessed. So that may be sufficient to continue the obligation going forward, if they incorporate. And I know there's a lag time between incorporation and, or at least between what the legislation may say and when the entities actually receive additional tax revenues. And I've heard the number of 2 to 3 years. I don't know how accurate that is, because I've not looked at that issue, but obviously there's going to be a transition time period regardless. And so one of the things we did in the interlocal, the first one is that you can change your form. And when we did that, we added, for example, a city incorporates, they were added from unincorporated county to the UPD like we did with Mill Creek. And it would just be an amendment to the interlocal as that happens. That may be fine. The only issue is this interlocal has a clause in it that specifies that you must ratify all amendments that the board passes, or you will deem to have withdrawn from the UPD. It's to clean up what I think has been a gray area and a practice of the board having the authority to amend, and then it just says the council shall approve, and it doesn't say what happens if they don't. So that's one of the issues that actually UFA dealt with, and saying if you don't ratify an amendment, then you're considered to have withdrawn. Because I think under the statute, you have to have a mechanism to say that all amendments are agreed upon by everyone. So I like that structure much better. I would recommend it to the board. And we can look at the question of whether if somebody changes, whether that needs to be amended or not. That's a good point to look at before the January meeting, because I do think that there will be corporate structure changes going forward, members, and whether we just indicate in there that your structure is, or as it changes to, you would have to notify us of intent of no longer wanting to be a member of UPD and withdrawing. So
that also help me understand how Slovisa becomes a member of UPD.
Well, Slovisa is a non-voting. Its members have the vote. What we have done in the past is we recognize any funding mechanism as a minimum. So there's an obligation to pay that belongs to the funding mechanism. And that's why when Harriman or Riverton had their own members, they were also added as members of the UPD when they had to set up their own funding districts. And when they withdrew, those entities withdrew. They're still not voting members, but they are recognized as a funding mechanism to that they have an obligation to the organization as well. That's why we have included districts in the past in membership in the organization as non-funding members.
I mean, the county's a member of Slovisa. How does that work?
It would still have whatever votes it has in terms of what Slovisa does, but because UPD itself is not going to be providing any services to the county, then the county is not going to be a member of UPD. That's really how it looks. And so that the purpose of any interlocal is you combine resources for the purpose of receiving services or benefits from the interlocal entity. And if you're not going to be receiving any services from UPD, even though the funding mechanism is a larger geographical area than UPD provides, it still is just a something that is a member because of its obligations to pay, not because we're the only ones providing service to the entity. So it'd be like, why would Sandy be a member of UPD because we don't provide any services to Sandy, or why would any other city? It's about providing services, is how I look at it.
Fundamentally, you're tying the county to UPD, who is not a member of UPD, through that obligation to pay.
No, it would be Slovisa does.
Right, but the county's a member of Slovisa. Again, this is delving
It's not
into the
it's not like
nuance.
the Unified Fire
Like a
Service
different-
area where the county is a member and.
But we receive our fire service
area
from from the UFA.
Pays UFA, but it also pays Sandy Fire to provide, it pays two providers
It's a contract through through UFA.
serving the White City and Islands communities.
So I think fundamentally we need to look much more closely at that. All of the interlocal meetings have been scheduled at a time that I can't attend. So if you could send me the latest draft, I'd really appreciate it because I think we need to look at that
I
very
believe I
closely.
sent the latest draft already to council for the county. I know they wanted to monitor that and again, you know, as we, as I look at the reorganization issues and the difference between the Slovisa issues, I sort of tried to deal with this in terms of direct contact with the members who are receiving services from UPD and structure that way because the question obviously is, I think we all recognize that the purpose and intent of the legislation is to separate Salt Lake County from the UPD, and we've been moving that direction. I would welcome further input from representatives from the county and also from the board on how we move that issue forward with more clarity than we have. But we're still moving forward with what I think is a reorganization that recognizes that we're not going to be providing services to Salt Lake County, and therefore they're not going to be a member of UPD. And I don't know how else to state it other than that. I think Slovisa is a member. I know the county's a member of Slovisa, but I just think that that's a separate Slovisa issue rather than a UPD issue.
And
I think it's a both issue. So
I
think we can
asked Rachel Anderson, I said, can one member of Savisa get their services from another entity? So if it would be Salt Lake County, even though they're a member of Savisa, their funding that's collected by Savisa could go to not UPD, but it could go to the county. And they would retain being a Savisa member, but they just would be using UPD services. So that's important to remember, you know, so if, let's say Mill Creek said, hey, I want to go with the sheriff's office, and no, that wouldn't apply. If Curran said, is there a Savisa member, they'd go, well, we want to go with the sheriff. It would still be a Savisa member in that taxing potentially. Which gives us some.
I just think it would be preemptive to sign an interlocal until the funding scenarios are worked through.
Well, at some point, we have to plan for the future.
We do.
And so even though there are some question marks, what I've tried to do is prep this organization to the best extent possible to move forward with what I think we all understand is the eventual outcome.
Thanks.
Anything else?
Yeah, I have a few things. Jumping back to the interlocal meeting, just a couple things. One of the ones that was brought up was just the fund balance again, was talked about. Just as a reminder for everybody, overall, I think this interlocal is in a good place. And with the fund balance, the plan right now is that we won't set any kind of cap in the interlocal, but do all of that by policy. The one piece for me that I think I'm still interested in seeing in the interlocal is for Midvale. We want to ensure that if there's a precinct fund balance cap, that anything over that can be returned to the member. While we could technically do that in policy, I think I prefer to have that in the interlocal of just saying, if a cap is set, anything over that, it may be returned.
I think it says right now it can be used for UPD purposes, which would allow you to commit it to the following year's fee, but I don't think it says specifically return as.
Yeah, I do believe that it has that. We could use it for membership fees if we wanted to be able to put that back into our general fund because we had another need in the community to be able to do that.
What I would say is that I guess that can be part of the January discussion, unless you want to talk about it now, because.
I'm just throwing it out there for the group. Yeah. That's still on my mind.
I'm supportive of that idea. If we set a policy, there's no reason that it needs to be retained. And maybe that's something we can talk about.
What we'll do then is, I mean, unless there's any further discussion on that point, we'll include that in the interlocal draft that will come before you in January, that the funds in excess of whatever cap is deemed, but we don't have a cap right now. That could be returned to the member as well, or used for UPD purposes. So we would just add that language to read something like that going forward. There's also not we've not included a revesting provision. It now basically just says new members need to vest before they can depart with any assets, but existing members don't have to revest. There was some disagreement over that issue before, and just ultimately the board can change that provision, but the draft we have right now doesn't include existing members vesting again in the UPD for that purpose, or agreeing to stay a minimum time period, other than obviously there's a 1-year notice provision. So
It's a restated agreement, so it shouldn't change that in my view. If you're vested right now. It shouldn't change that. We're not doing a new, we're restating our interlocal. We're not, the organization is still there.
So it doesn't, an earlier draft had included some minimum period before that you agreed to stay, and it doesn't have that. So we're hoping that you'll all be happy and not want to leave.
The only other thing, again, we also talked about this in the interlocal. I've got mixed feelings on it right now, but just on the chief appointment and removal. Again, I know because I agree with what you see of making sure that the chief of police can make sure that things run smoothly here. Right now, I believe the word in there is consult, that they will consult with the impacted members. And I'm still interested, if the rest of the board is, of maybe defining that a little bit better. If there was a time period on that, while I very much trust Maz and don't expect that he would do this, but if there was if things changed, and again, thinking long-term, that the chief went and said, hey, by the way, I'm removing Randy, and I've consulted with you now, congrats. And for us, that would be frustrating, or if we ran into a disagreement where maybe Maz didn't like, I'm just saying their names here, sorry, but just in general, if Maz wanted to remove Chief Thomas, but we wanted him to stay there, or vice versa, that we didn't like Chief Thomas, I mean, he is getting on my nerves recently, so say to Maz, and Maz wanted to keep him. I'm just curious, that's what I'm looking for. I think, you know, again, it says consult right now. I'm still interested in defining that a little bit better, of like, what does that actually mean, without trying to get us into any kind of legal trouble if there is something severe that happens.
I would say item number 1 on the agenda will be that topic in January, because we'll have another proposal to review on top of that. And I understand the concerns. I don't have something to give you right now, but if you guys want to discuss it, or if you people would like to discuss it, that's fine.
And we had a pretty thorough discussion about that at the interlocal. Again, it's just still something on my mind, so I want to throw that out to the board. The last thing I'll say, I think overall a good job covering the Merit Commission part, that just for the board to be aware. One of the requests that came through from labor is right now there are 3 labor commissioners. The proposal right now is that 2 of those would be submitted for approval by the board from the chief of police, so Nazarene, and then 1 of those would be appointed by the labor group, and then again approved by the board. So I think we were supportive of that, and we just need to define how that would work, the entity that it would come from.
There were some issues regarding what the person cannot be currently, such as a current member of the UPD, an employee of the UPD, or a current member of the labor organization board or management, so that while it's nominated by labor, it's not beholden to labor. And that was the issue that we need to work on some language, I think. But yeah, other than that, for the same reason, like we wouldn't appoint a current UPD employee to the Merit Commission, and or somebody who has served UPD, like when I say member, I mean officers. It could be you're not going to appoint me to the Merit Commission. So that's, we're trying to just put some guardrails in there. Obviously, I don't want to over define it because anything that's an attachment would then have to go to every member of the UPD for amendment. So we're trying to leave a little bit of authority in there, but that is for us. And actually, it would be nice to get some guidance on that if the board has any concerns.
I think what we talked about in the governance committee is that those concepts were acceptable to us in terms of having somebody nominated by labor, two people nominated by the chief, but the board has the authority. So we can reject one if we think there's a problem, but yes, there need to be guardrails on it so that there's no conflicts here. There's no obvious bias with respect to the board members need to be independent. And they also need to have some expertise in the field in order to the commission to have the trust of the people it's designed to protect.
Right. No, I just wanted to reiterate our commitment to that of having labor in these merit discussions. I appreciated that recommendation from them. And again, we'll get to the point. That's all I'm looking at.
Anything else? Thanks,
sir.
Thank you.
Oh, I have one brief, although unrelated announcement. As you know, last year, through the efforts of the department, we discovered that there are food pantries in a lot of the high schools around. And so I was able to get some donations from the Greek Orthodox Greek Festival charitable fund for those. And we just did it again this year for the same provider. So we've delivered checks to Hillcrest, Olympus's Food Bank, Food Pantry, to Kearns High, Cottonwood High, and the Utah Gang Investigators Association Food Pantry that is used for families who they are working with to keep kids out of gangs. So $1,000 each. Just thought I'd update you. We wouldn't have known about it if it wasn't for the efforts of the department to assist those food pantries. And just, it's a great charitable thing. I'd like to see if we could help a few more high schools, kind of identify Granger and Cypress as who we want to add to the list next year. So we'll work on that. But I think that any publicizing of those pantries to your communities is a huge benefit, because I've seen directly how many people, particularly kids, receive food from that otherwise may not have food security in their homes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Harry.
Thank you, Harry. That's much appreciated.
All right, we're moving to item 10, Finance Committee meeting updates.
Okay, this is gonna be fast this week. Okay, so just for the record, for the minutes, on item we did, if you look at the financial agenda, item 2 was discussed today in UPD, item 3, and item 4 in the financial agenda was discussed in UPD, item 5 for UPD. And in item 3 of the financial agenda will be discussed in the UPD on item number 15.
Great. Any questions from here? Thank you. All right, as always, our most contentious item on the agenda, Chief Wendell, acceptance of donations.
Good morning. Yeah, this is always a great, we accept donations and gifts for the department from various sources. So we want to publicly thank and extend our thanks to them for those donations. First, is that from Randy Thomas, Chief Randy Thomas, who heads as president of the Friends of Unified Police Canine, for a donation of $10,000. It's just in replacement, the recently retired Bobo. Kelly Bush, $2,000 for Supper Santa. I believe that's probably going to Kern. Paul Larson, a $750 donation for Supper Santa, that also in the Kern Community Council. The Magnum Community Council, Supper Santa donation of $500. Donation from Magna Town Council, Supper Santa donation of $3,000. And from Dan Kay, a Supper Santa, $200. Those donations that I have. So, again, we expect to send our thanks for them.
I move to approve the, or accept the donations. Thank the donors for their generosity.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to accept these very generous donations. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Thank you all for those donations. It's very generous. All right. Item 12, approval of surplus resolution 2312.
This is the surplusing of 2 vehicles from our fleet, have limited value, really no expectation of being serviceable. Just for approval of the surplus those.
Motion to approve surplusing those 2 vehicles.
Second.
Motion and second, any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
All right, item 13, fiscal year 2023 quarterly budget amendments. We're first gonna hear the introduction from the fiscal year 2023. Quarterly budget amendments. Jared.
For record keeping, just so we're missing harmony. So on the last 2 votes, one of the donations and of the surplus, who motioned to accept and who seconded? First for the.
On the acceptance of donations, I believe that was so restraining.
That was on the donations and on the surplus vehicle, it was Aaron.
Surplus, yeah. Yes. Figure of how much we miss our meetings.
These were all being-
Thank you, Chair, Mr. Chair and Board. I just handed out to you the draft page for the audit with that new language in there. So with that, that's been included. And he will send us now the final audit. We will. So again, the quarterly amendments were presented to the Finance Committee earlier this morning. Just quickly, amendments for the second quarter include the following in the general fund. As Chief Dial said, there's a $250 contribution to help cover the equipment and training expenses. That donation was presented to the board in the October 19th board meeting. UPD also received $10,000 contribution from Friends for UPD K9, and that's going to go towards the purchase of a new K9 police dog and then replacing retired K9 Molo. UPD received $27,700 as an it's called the Early Intervention Grant, and it's going to purchase the I8 Pro software, which replaces the current AIM software that's used by Internal Affairs. And the reason is that I8 Pro has an early intervention feature, which is required by the grant. Funding for the second half of the fiscal year 24 for the watch command position was discussed at the last board meeting. The total fiscal impact is $100,500 for salary and benefits, and that will be funded from unused overtime in the public order unit budget, and the balance of unused wages and benefits from the retirement of the watch command lieutenant in October. Amendments for the current precinct include current has remaining unspent CARES funds in the amount of $41,487 that they're now going to allocate to travel and transportation to be used in this fiscal year budget. We also have a reclassification of the victim advocate position that was discussed at the last board meeting, and the total fiscal impact is $21,243, and that will be funded from current fund balance. Current precinct received, as Chief Dial mentioned, the $2,000 donation from the Greater Salt Lake Municipal Services District. And they also received a $750 donation from the Kearns Community Council, both of which are going to go to the sub-percent program. Magnet Precinct includes 3 donations for sub-percent events, one $2,500 donation from the Magnet Community Council, a $3,000 donation from the Magna Town Council and a $200 donation from private citizens. And then amendments to the Salt Lake County wide include a $16,000 transfer from the telephone, cable, and data budget line item to the education and training line item and the training and transportation line item budgets to cover this year's grant increase for the Metro Gain unit training. So with that, the total impact for the amendments for this second quarter are $225,600.
Chair, I'll make a motion to open the public hearing with respect to the quarterly amendments to the fiscal year 2023.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to open public hearing. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we'll open this up for public comments. Do we have any public comments? Do we have any online public comments? Seeing none. For a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right. That's closed. Now into the board discussion and motion. Entertain a motion unless there's any questions or
I
comments.
just ask a quick question. This is just a clarifying question on the general fund revenues. And maybe it's not important, but the balance of unused wages and benefits, 1120. Should those totals that we're going to approve be added to the approved budget of 577,750?
See what you're saying.
I'm saying we're approving increases in those line items.
Okay, here it is. Milk
You're
Street.
correct. They shouldn't increase the budget.
And it carries a vegetable.
Absorb part of what that increase, well.
Thank you.
Yeah, right. It's going to increase the budget. Yes, it should be used because the budget is going to be increased, and that's part of what was budgeted for the first part of the quarter. So technically, what would have happened is that would have fallen into the fund balance if we hadn't used it. So now it's going to be like reallocated to fund the second half.
Okay, so we are, okay, I'm just trying to figure out what we're approving
And I see
here.
what you're saying. So you are approving, so technically you are approving the 100,500 less the salary and wages that are sitting in the balance of the unused salaries and wages of the retired.
Okay, so we budgeted 577,750. The request for a budget amendment is 21,897. And the budget of approved is we're approving the same budget line item as we approved in the initial budget. That's all I'm saying.
You got these numbers here, then you have these numbers, but these
Oh,
numbers don't
right,
change.
and the reason, okay, sorry, I misunderstood what you were asking me. The reason that doesn't change is because it's, as I was explaining, it's already included in the first half of the year. Because that was funding the watch command for the first half of the year. It wasn't used, but that doesn't mean that we also now need to increase the budget because it's already there.
Yeah,
That's the.
okay, but if the budget didn't change, I
That's
just wondered why we need the amendment.
Yes,
But anyway,
that remains
you're
the
okay
same.
with that, I'm fine. I just wanted to point it out before we vote.
Yes.
I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the amendments to the fiscal year 2023-2024 budget as presented. Resolution 22-12-04 of 2023.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, passes. Thank you. Upcoming meetings, we've got several. We've got interlocal committee meeting Thursday, January 11th at 10 a.m. Our next board meeting on January 18th at 9 a.m. We've also got a board meeting on February 7th at 8:30. And then a board meeting.
1 week apart. I was that.
We need harmony for that question. We know why those are on.
I think it's just how it falls in February. Since the 15th is the earliest Thursday we can have a board meeting, or earliest. It's the
third.
the third Thursday, thank you. We typically do the reorg meeting the first Wednesday. So I think it's just falling on 4 days.
So, Mr. Chairman, what I believe happened is the board a few months ago postponed or canceled a few of the reorganization meetings, but left from February on back on the calendar. So we actually are going to propose an annual or a calendar for the entire year in January meetings, regular board meetings. But maybe this would be a good time to discuss what the board wants to do about the reorg meetings, being back on the calendar as of February.
Essentially, do we need to keep meeting twice a month instead of once?
Yeah, so we have been doing once a month. We're gonna, right now, at least, because the decision was to cancel them November, December, January, they're automatically back on the calendar in February. So I think that's why that's that way. I guess it's up to you if you want to keep it that way, or if you want to discuss this in January about how we want to handle the reorg meetings going forward.
I think that's a good idea to wait until January, because then we have more information on budget and interlocal.
Some of us are gonna have on that February 15th date, there's a UFA benefits and comp meeting at 8 o'clock that day. So, and that'll be an important meeting for some of the committees because of the budget formation.
So I didn't hear, is the 15th a regular meeting that we've got set? Okay.
When you said 8:30 on that one?
No, that's on the 7th.
No, the UFA meeting, what?
UFA meeting starts at 8.
8?
It
So
probably will last an
an
hour.
hour,
So
maybe
yeah,
an hour and a half. 'Cause we could start at 9:30.
that would work.
Would that help?
Yeah, as long as
we push that benefits and comp to 7.
if we could get across the street fit quickly enough.
I think so.
We'll stop traffic for you.
How's that? Okay. Can you do that, Amanda, then, for that meeting?
Is the board comfortable with that?
It just seems silly to have a meeting 2 weeks in a row.
I would say, I guess, if we change that to 9:30 and then keep in mind as we get closer, if we can cancel that meeting and not have to do it.
Right. Or we just cancel
Well,
the
is
7th
that,
meeting.
is that one the third Thursday? Cause that's
The
the,
15th is,
we don't usually cancel the regular. schedule.
Yeah,
I mean, you
It would
can,
make more sense to cancel the 7th.
the 7th.
That's the reorg meeting. Because we have the same conversation at the reorg as we have here.
Yeah, I was this year, so. It'd be the next week.
do we just want to plan to scratch the February 7th meeting at this time?
In January, if you decide that you want.
Yeah, okay. We'll agree with that. I'm sure everybody in here is very sad that we get to sit. All right. And February 15th being moved to 9:30.